When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
It's perfectly browned, it's melty, it's sweet. It's the s'more you just cooked over the fire at AutoCamp. That's right, Hilton brings you new ways to stay, where you don't just get nightly s'mores. You also get clubhouse happy hours to gather under the stars. All while staying in custom-designed Airstreams, cabins, and tents, and insanely cool outdoor destinations. If AutoCamp sounds like a dream, it sounds like it's time to redeem those Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Hello, it's Gareth here. This is the Somewhere on Earth podcast for Tuesday, the 11th of February, 2025. And we have a voice from Egypt today, amongst others, and another voice from, well, basically just up the road from where I am, here in London. Here we go. Yeah, and that voice is the excellent Ania Lichtarowicz, editor, producer. What did we call you last week when I said you're not...
The hack.
The hack, that's it. So you're not an expert, you don't know anything, but you look it up beforehand and you sound credible.
Exactly. It doesn't matter what you say as long as you sound confident, was the first thing I ever learnt on a BBC Live reporting course at BBC Bristol in the West Country.
Oh, those dark hack secrets are coming out now. Say it like you mean it. Say it like you know it.
Well, that's a very interesting question, Gareth. And I can agree with you slightly there. However, see, that's at least 10 seconds.
You've done it. That's nicely done, isn't it? Yeah. You know, like, that's a great question, Gareth. But I think the real question here is... Anyway, look, I think you and I are underselling you, and you're a long-running journalist and correspondent. You do know your stuff, so the listeners can have every confidence in what you have to say. Genuinely.
God, I wish my kids did. Hey ho, I'll play this to them.
Well, that's a whole other thing. Yeah. Good luck with that. All right, here we go. Let's do some podcasting. And coming up today. This week, more on content moderation. Yes, the big platforms continue to get bad press over the lack of moderation. The EU is investigating Elon Musk's X, formerly known as Twitter. Meanwhile, up to 100 million people in North Africa are subject to hate speech and dangerous content because the tech companies just seem to think that Arabic is one great big homogenous language, whether you're in Algeria or Egypt or anywhere else in that vast region. It all sounds a little bit like tech for bad. So thank goodness that our reporter has found yet more tech for good at the recent CES conference as machine learning gives early warning of pancreatic cancer. We'll talk about that right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. Well, if you're one of our frequent flyers, as I like to call you lovely people who tune in regularly, then you'll recall that we were having a little bit of a go at the tech platforms for insufficiently moderating content for millions of social media users in sub-Saharan Africa. That was a few weeks ago. Wairimu was telling us that tiny content teams have been responsible for entire countries or even regions. And of course, that's been great news if you're a hate speecher or a BS merchant. The content moderators that you do see in the region are most likely outsourced labour supporting English language content for US users thousands of kilometres away. Well, we have a bit of a bee in our bonnets about all this. How corrosive and worrying it is that millions are being exposed to dangerous and abusive content while the profits roll in for the big social media platforms. And wouldn't you just know it, it turns out that a big swathe of Western and Central North Africa is poorly served as well. And I'm talking here about Maghrebi Arabic speakers, between 80 and 100 million people in all. Mona Elswa is with the Centre for Democracy and Technology and has done a report on this issue, and she's been telling me more about the Maghreb region.
So the Maghreb region itself consists of Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, and Libya. We choose to focus on Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria for more of sharing more of culture and similar linguistic background. So we focus on these three countries of the Maghreb region. Maghrebi Arabic is one of the many variations of Arabic. So what people know and think of Arabic is the standard Arabic, the Arabic used in Quran, the Arabic used for speeches. But this is not what people speak on daily basis, not what people actually use on social media. People use what is known as dialectical Arabic. So dialectical Arabic has many variations, and Arabic has been influenced by many cultures and colonization and history that evolved the language throughout centuries. So if we're going to talk about Arabic, there are the Maghrebi Arabic, there is the Mashriqi Arabic, which is in Egypt, for example, and there is also the Gulf Arabic, there is the Levant Arabic. So there are variations of Arabic. So Maghrebi Arabic is very interesting because when we talk about conmoderation, it's less studied because the Maghreb region is more of less politically interesting for tech companies. It's less chaotic, if we can say this, or it's less noisy in the media. We wanted to be the voice of this region for the first time. This is literally the first report that discusses in detail the consideration for the Maghreb region.
And yet, as your report says, when it comes to content moderation by the big social media companies, they tend to lump everything into just Arabic then. Is that what you're saying then? Sort of highly diverse region, linguistically, culturally, politically, and yet moderation is a kind of catch-all and it's not going brilliantly. Is that the message?
There is that, but also... Okay, so when it comes to content moderation, the manual content moderation, the hiring of content moderators or at what we call vendors. So vendor of content moderation is basically an outsourced company that tech companies pay for them to do this content moderation labor for them. When they hire moderators, so if you're from Tunisia, you can moderate content from Egypt, or you can moderate content from Saudi Arabia. They don't really care as long as you can speak Arabic. The assumption is that you can, moderate any content from the Arab world, which is not the case. I wouldn't be able to understand an Algerian conversation. How can I, as an Egyptian, moderate content from Algeria? I wouldn't understand it even. I literally don't. And we have to even speak in English so we can understand each other. It is that different. So in the content moderation labor of Arabic, it doesn't work this way. It works that as long as you can speak Arabic, let's assume you can moderate content from any country in the region.
What are the implications for that then? So you're just talking about poorly moderated content. Does it mean that abusive content, hate speech is finding its way through? Or anyway, just tell us why this is a problem.
It is a problem because it leads to what we call inconsistent content moderation. It leads to harmful content remaining online and unharmful content is removed accidentally. Yes, it's not like all the time, but we will have situations where content that is not supposed to be removed is removed and content that is supposed to stay is actually not. So it leads to hate speech remaining online. It leads to people wanting to express their opinions. They couldn't because their content is being removed by the moderators who don't understand the dialect, who don't understand the context. It leads to unfortunate events, and it leads to the continuation of the user distrust towards these companies, because they don't know whether, if you posted a photo of your cat or your dog, whether this photo will remain or not, because the moderators may not understand the context. And it's not just the fault of the moderators. There is also this algorithmic moderation. I can talk about this as well. There's lots of errors when it comes to algorithmic moderation as well, similar to the human moderation, different dynamics, but still, like, the inconsistency of moderation decisions is very harmful to the platforms and to the users as well.
Yeah, and of course users are getting around this, aren't they? There's this kind of idea of algo-speak, so using language in a way that foils the algorithms. And I'm trying to understand, does this mean people are trying to use or succeeding in using algo-speak to trick the algorithms into letting through harmful content? Or is this more really on the other side of things because they're trying to avoid being censored politically?
So it's actually both. So when you look back at the algo-speak idea, it started with activists trying to get around the algorithms, but also bad actors could also use the same methods in hiding their harmful messages to remain online. So it could be used by both good actors, activists to express their opinions, but also could be used by bad actors to promote for their ideas. So it could be used by both. But the notion of algo-speak is like a counter tactic to the repressive algorithms that activists self-learned how to get away with it. And it's one of the resistance that you see of people in general throughout history, trying to find ways to keep their voice up and to keep, to share their ideas. Now we are seeing algo-speak. We see different tactics that are shared among activists, among digital rights advocates, even like users, like the average user or not activists. They are learning these methods to keep their voice up online. The models could be updated and could meet these algo-speak tactics. However, again, I still believe that users will again find ways, because the resilience, again, have been on different mediums throughout history. And I believe that the resistance will remain and users will always find ways to keep their voice.
Yeah. So you've surveyed across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. What about trust levels then among people in the Maghreb region in terms of how much users trust those social media platforms?
So when I was doing the research, it was literally in the middle of the Gaza war. So there was a lot to say about users distrusting specifically Western social media companies, because the way they perceived it as that it's taking down content, restricting the content, specifically in relation to the war in Gaza and Palestinian events in general. So a lot of the conversations I had with participants, there was a lot of beliefs and ideas that their content is either shadow banned or restricted or removed because of their content on Gaza. And even like they're interviewed like influencers with hundreds and thousands of followers, and they would say that their viewership is declined immediately whenever they talk about the war in Gaza. So I saw this pattern of distrust among users in the survey and in the focus group sessions I held. And the pattern is specifically targeting Western social media companies, as opposed to the non-Western TikTok that participants indicated it is like it allowed them to speak more freely. And it's like, if you look at the comparison between like TikTok versus Western social media companies, you would see that like TikTok is gaining more popularity in the global south as this counter hegemonic platform. It's like a diplomacy thing. It's changing. I'm not saying that it's 100% like it's doing better. I'm saying that the way they are perceiving it is different compared to Western social media companies. And again, as I told you, like inconsistent moderation and shadow banning does not only harm users, it also harms social media companies as well.
That's Dr. Mona Elsewhere. She's with the Centre for Democracy and Technology. She was talking to us there from Egypt. So, Ania, what a fascinating topic this is. And I confess my ignorance here. I knew about the Maghreb region, and I guessed there would be many millions of Maghrebi Arabic speakers there. But I think I'd maybe underestimated how big an issue this all is.
Well, I think when Mona said in that interview, I have to speak English to other Arabic speakers who live in different parts of the world.
Yes.
That kind of tells you a lot, really, about the variation in the language. So, it certainly is something that's not being addressed. You know, Wairima was talking about this same issue with Kiswahili, and we're seeing it here as well.
Yeah. Something else that came up there was this whole idea of algo speech, which can cut both ways, can't it? You know, people could be using algo speech because they want to fool the moderators and the algorithms in order to promulgate some horrible, abusive content. Or on the other hand, it might be people who are, I don't know, political dissidents maybe, who are using algo speech to really game the algorithms to be able to evade censorship. So it does cut both ways. I thought that was an interesting part of the interview.
It was. And just to be kind of tell people, because not everybody would have heard of algo speech, because it is quite specific. So this is from Wikipedia. It is the use of coded expressions to evade automated moderation algorithms on social media platforms such as TikTok and YouTube. It's used to discuss topics deemed sensitive to moderation algorithms while avoiding penalties such as shadow banning or downranking of content. It's a type of internet slang and a form of linguistic self-censorship. The term algo-speak is a blend of algorithm and speak, also known as slang replacement or Voldemorting, as in he who must not be named from the Harry Potter books.
Very nicely done.
So really what we see from this is that people specifically use language that will go under the radar here. And there are whole communities that use this type of language, so they avoid detection and they can carry on expressing themselves as they want to.
Yeah, no, of course. I thought it was interesting as well, hearing about this distrust of especially the Western social media platforms. And so there's quite a flight towards TikTok, even though, of course, at a political level in the United States, TikTok had been rather vilified. And, well, it's a bit up in the air now. Elon Musk might end up running it, even though I don't actually believe that might happen. But people are saying that Elon Musk might be lined up to take over TikTok in the United States. Anyway, I doubt it. That's a bit of a side issue. But what we're getting to, Ania, is whether there is a flight, whether it's TikTok or anywhere else, just away from the Western social media platforms around trust issues.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also there's a generational thing. So we've had the regional thing where people in the global south are less trusting of the Western platforms like Meta, but also younger people tend to be less trusting of the more traditional old school platforms that perhaps people who are older use and have been using for a long time. So there's those two aspects there.
Yeah. All right. Ania, thank you. Do you fancy a few listener comments?
I do.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Yes, I do.
All right, producer Ania. Right, so Stefano, he was listening. He always listens. Thank you, Stefano. And he was listening to us talk about the whole AI and jobs issue last week, and machine learning and the various opportunities and threats it raises, depending on whether you have a job that maybe is quite related to, like, training large language models, for instance, or if you're a translator on the other side of things, that maybe your work is being replaced by machine learning, which I think is terribly sad, because I know a lot of translators and I hope they're going to be all right through this. Anyway, Stefano is researching voice cloning in Welsh and English, which is close to my own heart because I speak a bit of Welsh. I am from that part of the world. Stefano says the major problem we have in Wales is that we are a bilingual nation and both languages are used in day-to-day conversation, hence why bilingual models are needed. Also, there's a lack of data available for us to fine-tune the larger open source models and hence why we've started collecting spontaneous speech as well as more formalised speech to train the models. And I'm glad you're doing that, Stefano. And I guess what he's getting at there, Ania, is that Welsh is... it's quite... I don't
it's
know.
Impossible. The letters of the word at the front of the word change. You can't even look it up in a dictionary. It's just impossible.
Don't get me started. Yeah, exactly. Because I should have looked at whether Welsh is officially a minority language. I mean, it probably is. Certainly not many people speak it.
It is.
Yeah, so we can call it a minority language. And you're right, Ania. Yeah, that whole thing about the front of a word changing according to its context. Now, I'm going back to the Welsh that I learnt at school, and I hope I'm going to get this right. But to give you an example, the first letter of a Welsh word changes, it mutates, we call it in Welsh, depending on whether it's a singular feminine noun, I think. So, for instance, the word for child is plentyn, and in Welsh, just the word child has the female gender, even though I know children can be all kinds of genders, but... It's just that the Welsh language says that plentyn should be mutated to blentyn, so it goes from a P to a B. If it's after some kind of preposition, Stefano is going to be shouting back at his earbuds now that I'm getting this horribly wrong. But hopefully the point I am making is that, yeah, absolutely, under certain circumstances, the beginnings of words change in Welsh, and then they're called mutations. And the mutation that always just confused the living daylights out of me is the nasal mutation, and you say something like "uchraiada" and stuff, and I'm sorry I haven't spoken Welsh enough to remember it very well. But your point is very well made there, Ania, that this is, there are fluent Welsh speakers who will probably agree with me that this stuff gets pretty confusing. So imagine what that's going to do with language models, unless, like Stefano, you're going out there and collecting spontaneous speech. And I wouldn't mind betting that in spontaneous speech, some of these mutation rules are probably broken. I'm not saying they go away. It's still going to be really confusing, but I bet some of these rules are broken, and that's where you need a ton of data, and then you can get somewhere close to voice cloning. It's fascinating.
I think you've left me speechless on that, because it's just,
what can you say? Exactly.
I was going to say, like, Polish is hard with all these extra, double letters that we have, and the, a few different commas off the bottoms of letters and marks on top of them. But nothing like Welsh, really.
Nothing quite like Welsh. There's nothing like Welsh for stealing technology words from English and trying to make them sound Welsh as well. It's just another one like
Polish.
Really, like email in Welsh is ebost, meaning e-post, and that's mutated. See, it went ebost, I think it's called, not e-post. So you go, I got an ebost from Delwyn earlier. There's some good ones as well, which will come back. I think computer is just computer, something like that.
It's komputer in Polish because the U's pronounced differently,
lovely.
and that's a mistake that any non-native Polish speaker always makes. So you can be brilliant at Polish and really get away with it until you say that word. Because people say computer, and no, it's komputer.
Oh, yeah, noted.
That took me ages to learn as a child.
There we are, yeah. And I think post-it is noddin boddin. Which is beautiful.
Should we find out what Floyd had to say?
Let's go to Floyd. Floyd says, anybody who's putting out these cloning softwares come to terms with the fact that we humans, like most, if not all living species, not only have different languages, but different variants of these languages, different accents within countries, regions, conurbations, suburbs, and streets even. And then there are our personal idealects. By the way, just started listening to the latest episode on AI, continues Floyd, and no, I wasn't fooled. And Floyd refers to that intro that we did with a cloned voice. Floyd said, no, I wasn't fooled. It was embarrassingly awful, which was the entire point. And I'm glad you got that point, Floyd. That's quite a relief. And that point that Floyd makes about the variants of different languages and dialects and so on. Again, coming back to Welsh from my upbringing, I know very well that the accent was. I'm talking more about accents than dialects here. This would be how people spoke English, because where I lived was near the border, so with England. So to be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of Welsh apart from on market day, when there was a lot of Welsh at the livestock market. But there was a difference between the Fordham accent and the Montgomery accent, and they were only a few miles apart. So, yeah.
Huge variations there.
There.
Well, also we have a comment from Louisa McGuinness about AI taking our job. She says, the current tools, nope. And I'm working with AI tools. And Matthew Schrobel also says, AI is in my programming development tools. I find it very helpful. I almost reads my mind, understands the naming conventions of variables, knows when I add a new parameter to a function, what I'm going to do next. It's rather uncanny at times. Saves a lot of time. Now, a programming language has a rather strict syntax, so it is much simpler for it to do than write a book. But it's not writing a book, it's working on one line of code at a time. So that's, I think, the point that Fabian was making last week, wasn't he? That it can do the simple things like simple translations, simple coding. It can't do the complex stuff yet.
Yeah. No, sure. It's like an elaborate autocomplete, I think. You start typing an algorithm that you want to do, in code, and some of these things will spit out maybe a whole even 20 lines of code because it knows the thing you're trying to get it to do, said Gareth, who's evidently not a programmer, not putting it very technically. So there you go. If you've got the whole issue of different dialects and different accents from one town in mid Wales to another, then it takes us right back to the beginning, Ania, when we're trying to think about moderation and even algorithmic moderation for a massive region like the Maghreb region, across big swathes of central and western North Africa. Good luck with that. So there we are. Right, shall we have a bit of Jez now, Ania? You fancy that?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Intrepid reporter Jez, here he is, and he's still on the search for tech for good at CES.
Hello, it's Jez Donaldson again with another interview from CES. Pancreatic cancer is often described as a silent killer because there are often no clear symptoms and it's often detected when patients only have weeks left to live. Another amazing founder that I interviewed at CES on the 9th of January 2025 was Logan Nye of Galen Health. A medic and computer scientist, Logan and his team have devised an AI that helps predict the onset of pancreatic cancer much, much earlier than is typically the case today. It does this by automatically and continuously scanning medical records, looking for correlations that human medics simply don't have the time for. In the interview, Logan explains why he chose to make this his life's work, how the system works, and how they plan to apply it to many other cancer types.
Hi, my name is Logan Nye. I am a physician and computer scientist based out of Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I am founder and CEO of Galen Health. And what we do is we use artificial intelligence and high-performance computing to solve cancer. So within cancer care, the best treatment is essentially early detection. That's the best thing that we can do right now, is identify a cancer early so you can get it treated early, and then that does wonders for the outcomes. OncoSight is an artificial intelligence system that plugs into electronic health records to basically use a big data approach to find out who's the most likely to get a certain type of cancer in the near future and notifying them so that if and when it does arise, they're able to take action on it as soon as possible, and that increases their likelihoods of better outcomes and survival.
Is it actually in use in hospitals today?
It's not used for making clinical decisions yet. We have pilot studies with partner hospital institutions. For example, we're based out of Pittsburgh, and one of the big healthcare systems in Pittsburgh is UPMC Healthcare. And we have a pilot study with them right now where we're using about 250,000 patients worth of data to scale our models and to calibrate its efficacy.
Do you see its utility beyond the US anytime soon?
Yeah, that's one of the great things about digital products, is that you build it once, and then with some slight modifications, you can repurpose it and deploy it elsewhere as well with minimal cost of reproduction. So we want to build it for pancreatic cancer in the US, but then expand to other types of cancer and then other countries as well.
So what kind of indicators does OncoSight's AI look at to identify at-risk patients?
So one of the things that's really promising about our approach is we use very general data. for our risk stratification. The idea is that we want to use data points that everybody has on file, like including you, myself, you, your loved ones. We're trying to use data points that everybody has in their electronic health record profile to try to determine who is high risk and who is not. So it's surprisingly general stuff, like your age, your demographic, where you're from, your relationships with other individuals, what's called CPT codes, so insurance codes that indicate maybe what you've been treated for in the past, when you're treated for it, your medications that you take, the dosages, how frequently you take them. All sorts of information about your health profile is encoded in ways that a machine can pick up on. So we use that information that everybody has as a way to kind of pull all this data together and figure out who's the highest risk.
That sounds like a really smart approach, and one that AI is particularly well suited to do. It also sounds like an approach that could be applicable to any kind of cancer. And do you have any more cancer types in your sights?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got 10 lined up that we want to do after pancreatic cancer, but one of the things about building technology is you want to start simple and do it well, hammer out the process, and then you can replicate that for other cancer types. We decided to start with pancreatic cancer because it is one of the cancers where early detection makes the biggest difference, because currently it shows up late stage and people will usually only have a few months left to live before they pass away. But if you can identify it early, like in stage 1 or stage 2 instead of stage 4, then you're eligible for a surgical treatment that's potentially curative. So we thought that that's a great place to start, but after that, there's all sorts of other cancers that still don't have an effective screening test that we can build for. So hepatocellular carcinoma, like liver cancer, kidney cancers as well, all sorts of gastrointestinal cancers. Surprisingly, esophageal cancer is one that sneaks up on people, but there's a list where these cancer types don't have any clear-cut mechanism for identifying it early where AI can help.
What sort of challenges did you have integrating with electronic health records, and how often do you see yourself needing to redo that in different states or jurisdictions?
So one of the surprising things about getting into healthcare AI is you would think that writing the code and all of that is the difficult part, but in my experience, the hardest part about curing cancer has been the red tape of getting into healthcare systems, right? If we need to repurpose models and recalibrate, we have the skill to do that. We've got some smart folks that are able to repurpose things within a matter of weeks, but getting into healthcare systems is a long timeline. It takes months to years to get into healthcare systems, so that is by far the biggest hurdle to getting implemented.
That's Logan Nye talking to Jez Donaldson at the Consumer Electronics Show, and definitely an example of tech for good. And I think what I would take away from that, Ania, is it shows what you can do with big, large data sets.
Absolutely.
It comes around to Stefano actually just saying, look, there's not enough data. We need to go out there and gather that data. And I'm pretty sure with this pancreatic cancer story that the reason that you can take, quite general and generic data from, health data from people, if you have enough data and enough people, then you can pick out little signals in that data that could point to a pancreatic cancer risk. Anyway, you've been a health correspondent, so you really are. You're more than a hack on this. You know what you're talking about. So what did you make of it?
I did think the data points that everyone has on file, using those. So simple things like your age, where you live, what medicines you take, what treatments you've had. That's such a simple thing. And this is what a doctor does. You go and see your doctor or you go see a new specialist. They say, tell me about, how this all started. It's taking a medical history, isn't it? But that's obviously time consuming and costly because you're, having to repeat yourself to every single doctor you meet. And this is just the AI taking that information and using it to predict what might be happening in the future with your body. So I thought that particular aspect was incredibly interesting. And what was also interesting was that the tech is there, Logan was saying, but that it is it's the red tape that's getting into the records that's actually slowing them down at the moment. We even see this with our medical systems today. You go into one hospital and the system doesn't talk to another hospital. So it's like, but I've had that scan already, or I've had that x-ray already. Oh, we've got to do another one. I'm sorry. And I think, it's these kind of old-fashioned things that aren't keeping up, that the old records haven't been updated fully and properly, that's now stopping the new tech from being used to its full potential.
And a key point from that interview was that some cancers, and pancreatic's a good example, are notoriously difficult to detect, aren't they?
They are. And, this is what Logan kept saying. It's trying to find, the potential risk of you getting one of those cancers that's difficult to find. He was talking about ones that don't have tests for. But for instance, there are cancers that have tests, but again, are difficult to find because of the lack of symptoms until they present very late. So I'm thinking of ovarian cancer in this case, which there is a test for. You can have blood tests, you can have scans, but they often only get done when secondary tumours appear. So for instance, once a woman has a problem going to the loo, because there's a bowel obstruction, by which point you've got a tumour on the ovary and you've got secondaries in the bowel and maybe elsewhere, by which point it is often inoperable.
Wow. Yeah, you want to pick it up early when you can. All right, Ania, thank you. I think that'll do us for today. Quick shout out to the Evergreen Podcast Network. We love them because we're part of their gang now. And you can check out some other Evergreen podcasts, all the other Evergreen podcasts on their platform. They're easy to look up and easy to get in touch with us as well. hello@somewhereonearth.co is our email. hello@somewhereonearth.co. On WhatsApp, we're 7486 329 484. Leave us a voice note as well about anything that you've heard on the show or anything you'd like to hear. Haven't had a voice note for ages, so hint, hint, if you send us one in, you'll probably hear yourself on this podcast next week. And we'd love that. Our production manager is Liz Toohey, the editor and hack, as she likes to call herself, and producer, and just about everything else is Ania and Gareth. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. It's Michael Calore, Director of Consumer Tech and Culture at Wired, here with my colleagues, senior writer Lauren Good.
Hello.
And Wired contributor Zoe Schiffer.
Hey, everyone.
We're here to tell you about our new podcast, Uncanny Valley, a show about the people, power, and influence of Silicon Valley.
Every week, we get together to talk about how technology and culture from the Valley is influencing our everyday lives.
We dig into questions like, will we ever get our privacy back? Is OpenAI for real? And how are Silicon Valley billionaires impacting U.S. elections?
The first episode of Uncanny Valley comes out on October 31st. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.